This clip is from the PianoInspires podcast, Season 2, Episode 15, featuring guest Jessica Johnson with host Andrea McAllister.
You are doing such amazing work with your students, sharing those vulnerabilities and saying, you can trust me.
Mm-hmm.
But what I love even more about what you're saying is you are also showing them that they can trust themselves.
That's right.
And with these reflective activities that you are helping them through, because I think unless you are taught how to do that, then that is a missing component of that process of trust.
Absolutely. I agree more. And I know in my own journey, as somebody who has generalized anxiety, and that's been something that, those of us with trait anxiety are more likely to have performance anxiety. There's the data is clear and it makes perfect intuitive sense as well. Being afraid to put myself out there. And I think of the things I didn't do because I didn't want to take the risk. But I also think of the things I did do, even though they were really hard because it aligned with my values. And when I went through a medical crisis about 10 years ago, and I started a mindfulness class, and I learned stillness and sitting with my anxiety and holding it rather than resisting, avoiding, it transformed everything in my life, particularly my teaching, my performance. Because then I was able to say, instead of, oh, it's terrible, I can't do this, I would frame the conversation around principles of self-compassion. So this feels bad. I'm not happy. Then with mindful curiosity, what is it exactly? Oh, I don't like the pacing in this transition, or I need to find a different fingering or a different gesture, a different way to group that so that it makes more sense. And then you could strategize and find a way forward and meet yourself where you are. You're your own teacher, right?
That is true.
And then that transformed my teaching and because of helping them see where they are and what do I need, rather than the personal judgment, perfectionism. Rather, it is, how can I solve this? What kinds of sounds can I make? And then the joy and the playfulness comes through. And then I remembered the second grader, the thing that I was so excited about. And then I always say, when I have those delightful moments with a student, I call them moments of joy, cultivating joy, where you catch somebody in the act and you're connecting and something's happening. And I'll often point it out to them. This is a moment of joy for me. I'm really happy to be here right now. And modeling that and waking them up and drawing attention. And they're like, oh, yeah, because we're so busy and the world is pushing us to be busy. So having some stillness where we're just right here. I do things like body scans before the lessons, before my own practice, before my own work, things that help me declare it a sacred space, that we're coming together to connect and share and trust each other. And whether it's alone or with a partner, whether rehearsal, it's a great thing I've learned. And I'm so grateful that my path went in that direction and that I was able to explore that, because it's really revolutionized where I am and how I feel about being a professional musician and teacher.
Yes, I so appreciate how you're talking about mindfulness and meeting yourself, but meeting yourself with curiosity instead of judgment.
Right.
And that is such a difficult thing for humans to do, because we are so naturally drawn to judgment first.
Yes.
Instead of curiosity. And maybe there are just people out there who just naturally do this, and I would love to be one of those people. But it's something that
But then you wouldn't be who you are.
That's exactly
which is your superpower.
But I listened to you talking about the mindfulness, and it reminded me of what you said at the beginning of this of this conversation is when you would come home from school as a middle schooler and you needed to go to the piano before you could engage with anyone in your house.
Yeah.
Was that your mindfulness practice back then?
Yes. And what I discovered is that musicians and artists who are very often in flow states and deeply engaged in our work, that mindfulness is an extension of that. And I'm like, oh, I already know how to do this. So I was afraid because I thought I'm too anxious to sit on a cushion and be still and wise. But what I learned was, oh, I've been cultivating this all of my life. And so helping my students also connect with that really important, because slowing things down, being able to be right where you are, pretty transformative,
It is transformative. It's very difficult. And
very difficult.
one of one of the difficulties about growing up and when you're younger and you can just go to the piano and just meditate
Yes.
and be at the piano just with yourself, no judgment. But then we audition
That's right.
and we go through juries and we have
Right.
interviews
Right.
and it's all of this external judgment that
Right.
feeds the internal judgment.
Right.
How do you help yourself and your students? Is it
Yeah.
just a daily practice that
It's hard. It's nonlinear. Every person has to find their own way. And at different times of your life, it's messy, it's chaotic. As I said before, you have to fail. You have to be willing to go outside your comfort zone. And I think for me, it's rooted in the self compassion and really working on that. I've even joked that I catch myself now, like, what a great idea I just had in when I'm teaching. Did you catch that? This was $1 million fingering suggestion. Because so often I don't come up with it quickly. So when I do, and my students will giggle. And I know that in my work with Midori Koga, we've known each other for 35 years. We did our graduate work together. We were roommates. We have similar struggles and also very aligned values. So we've kind of been following sort of similar paths professionally and in our teaching. And one of the things I was always grateful for when I was a student and I was trying to be what I was supposed to be
in the
with me,
box?
right, with Midori, I was real. So I was anxious. I was worried about this performance. I didn't feel like I belonged there in this elite music school. I was, a farm kid from nowhere who said Mozart and got laughed at, and then I tried to work on my Southern accent. I'm so glad that now I don't care about it, right? It's part of who I am, and I'm proud of that. But it took a long time. And I see that for my students, and I love it when they claim what really matters to them, and you see that growth. And, when they're willing to be vulnerable with me as a first step, and then I'm always like, find one person. That's all you need that you can be real with. That's where you start. Because vulnerability is rooted in connection. So you can't really be vulnerable and you can't tell your story if nobody is there to hear it.
That is very true.
And it's also the community, our very humanity, that music is powerful in that way. It brings people together across cultures and languages and political views. And we all want to sing and dance. We all want to express ourselves in that way. So I believe in it so much that it's helped me be braver in determining next steps, so that because it's so important to me. I feel like what we're doing is so important to the world because of the nature of it being a universal human need and a way of expressing who we are and finding the center of our humanity through it. And that's pretty good to tap into when you're really busy and it's the middle of the semester and everybody's tired, but find a way to connect and claim your own values and work to do that. And it usually will you'll come out through the other side. Sometimes you have to go through tunnels and difficult things. In fact, I would say that my most transformative moments, and I've seen this with my students and peers, colleagues, something that looks like a breakdown, something that looks like falling flat on your face, where you have to define why you're there. You have to claim it for yourself. And I would use an example, the dealing with cancer and mindfulness and having to say, this is how I'm going to emerge on the other side. There was also a time my father died when I was a senior in college, and I was planning grad auditions. I had the repertoire ready to go. And it was in September when it happened, and I just crashed. And I told everybody, I'm quitting. I'm quitting piano. I don't want lessons. I'm not going to grad school. And I went inward, and I always credit Beethoven for this because what called me was 109.
Of course.
And I just started playing it for myself, weeping, grieving, going through that tunnel. And I remember, 8 weeks, a couple months later, going to my teacher and saying, okay, I've got 109 ready. And he's like, okay, what's going on?
Wow.
But it was that kind of the thing that called me for what I needed. And it was so important to me at the time because it was on my terms. It was something that helped me deal with my humanity, grieve, all of the things that we have to do as humans to process the things that we go through. And I've seen that happen with many people, that there's something that calls to them, some way of connecting.
Be sure to listen to the full episode on our website, PianoInspires.com, on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.